Hello everyone and welcome back in the AGC webinars. My name is Suzan Ayeti, Account Manager for AGC and the PCB's organizer for this session. As you might know, it doesn't matter if you're conducting an internal or an external audit of the ISO 40001, you will surely stumble on problems during this procedure. To talk about certain ways of carrying out the auditing process and other difficulties that may appear, joining us PCB's certified trainer and senior consultant on occupational health and safety, Mr. Raza Shah. Feel free to write your questions and comments in the question box in the right-hand control panel, and Mr. Shah will answer to them accordingly. Moreover, if you want to participate directly in the discussion with Mr. Shah, you can also raise your hand, and then we will unmute your microphone and you can make questions directly to him. Please, Mr. Shah, you may start the presentation.
Thank you very much. I am Raza Shah from Pakistan, and I am auditor for ISO 9000, ISO 14000, ISO 22000, ISO 26000, and I am also trainer for these standards, and I am advanced auditor for SA 8000. Today the topic we are going to discuss is the difficulties in ISO 14000 auditing. As you all are familiar that 9000 is very common and very popular standard as compared to the ISO 14000. ISO 14000 is basically related to the environment management system, and for auditors it is compulsory that they must be aware about the environmental knowledge. So whichever industry or organization they want to audit, they must have the certain background of the environment terminology and environmental knowledge. So like other audits, the procedure of the EMS auditing is the same, and the main thing is the auditor and the audit team. So selection of audit team is important, and then before this you have to be clear the audit objectives and the scope, because if you are not clear about the audit objectives and the scope, you cannot select your audit team. And then you have to identify the audit criteria, on which criteria you have to conduct the audit. Normally, for the today discussion, our audit criteria is the ISO 14001 Environmental Management System. And when these things are clear, you have to plan for the audit program, and then you have to confirm with the auditee, your client, that we are going to audit in this way. And during the audit, you also need some checklist to guide you and the working documents. So although these areas are common in all the audits, but if in the EMS or IS 14000, these areas are more challenging than the ISO 9000, because for the ISO 9000, industrial knowledge is enough, but for the EMS you have to also have knowledge and background for the environment knowledge. So the main responsibility of any audit and its success depend upon the lead auditor. So for ISO 14000, you have to select the lead auditor very carefully, and lead auditor should be able to lead the team, and he should be able to plan the audit, and he should be able to select the other members of his team, and so the audit can be performed effectively and successfully. And if the team leader or lead leader is not competent or not capable of doing the audit in a fair manner or in a good manner, then we will not be able to add value after this audit. The lead auditor has to confirm the scope of the audit with the client. This is the important, and until unless you are not clear about the scope of the audit, you cannot manage the audit team, and you cannot decide about the time you require to complete this audit. Once you have the confirm the scope, you have all the related information to conduct the audit, and you have to, as a lead auditor, you have to confirm that the organization is complying with the requirements of ISO 14000, and for this you have to assign tasks to the different members of the team who are supporting to you during this audit. And you have to ensure that you have, as a lead auditor, you have the proper checklist and other documents and protocols you require to follow during the audit. So before going to the audit, you must be clear about the scope, you must be clear about the audit timing and number of auditors required, and you have to manage the required documents which you will use during the audit. And as a lead auditor, you have to convey the purpose and the objective and the scope of the audit to all your audit team. You have to solve any problem if there is any problem which is facing your audit team, and you have to represent or lead your audit team during the meeting and during the whole audit process, and you as a lead auditor have to complete the audit report and the findings of the audit report, and you are the responsible for all these things, although the other member of your team are with you, but ultimately responsibility lies with the lead auditor. The different certification bodies have the different criteria for the lead auditor. So it is not hard and fast for the different CBs that what they have set the criteria, but they have set specific criteria, experience, knowledge, and the lead auditor should be ISO 14000 qualified. And the lead auditor define the scope and objectives of the audit with the client, and these scope and criteria must be agreed between the lead auditor and the client. When we talk about the audit objectives, it should be clear to the lead auditor and to the client and to the other member of the team that why we are conducting this audit. Maybe the purpose of the audit is the ISO certification, or just it may be internal audit, or maybe some second party audit. So the audit objective should be clear to each party or each stakeholder. And at the same time, the scope of the audit should be also clear, and which organization we are going to audit and which facility we are going to audit, and EMS elements we have to audit, or activities we have to audit. So in this case, the audit criteria is ISO 14001, and at the same time definitely we have to take care of the regulatory requirement for audit. And you have to ensure that your audit team is familiar with the process and facility, and you have enough number of audits, and if there is any conflict of interest, you have to resolve, and you have to ensure that the facility has fulfilled all the requirements. So, if there is a small organization, you require one or two auditors. But if there is a large organization, you need more auditors. And auditors should be competent and that they can perform the audits and of the facility, and they should be familiar with the industry and the activities of the facility. And if you require, you have to add the technical expert. If you think that you as a lead editor don't have the experience of some specific industry, you have to add an expert of this industry in your audit team. And the audit team have to first thing, the audit team have to follow the instructions and guidance of the lead editor, and they will perform the assigned task which was assigned by the lead editor, and they will, as a team member, they will get the working document and collect evidences and document the findings, and they will protect the documents, and when during the report writing phase will be started, they will assist the report writer for the completion of the report, and for the non-conformance development. So ISO auditor for ISO 14001 must have the educational work experience, and he must have the enough experience specifically related to knowledge environment. He must be aware of the environmental science and technology. He must be aware about the environment aspects and operation and the regulation, and he must be aware with the ISO 14000 standard, and he must be aware with the audit procedure, process and techniques which are used to conduct this audit. So the auditor must be trained, and he must have the skills, speaking and writing abilities. He must have the speaking and writing abilities, and strong entrepreneurial skills, and act objectively, be organized and ethical. So an auditor must have all these qualities. These are the same like the other ISO auditing required, and he, as an auditor, he have to continue to maintain his skill and knowledge through education and trainings. And it is also very important to select the right auditors for an audit team. So you have to conduct the interviews of the candidate. You have to see how they write and how they speak and their communication skills, and you can also evaluate them through role-playing exercises, and you have to also evaluate them by seeing their professional certificates and their educational degrees. So during the audit, you have to audit basically in the four areas, and which are the policies, procedure, practices, and requirements. So, and you have to first determine the audit criteria against which you are evaluating these policies, procedure, and requirements. So in our case, the audit criteria is ISO 14000, and to understand these requirements, you can also go through the guidelines, and at the same time, the organization to implement, the organization has developed some documents for the implementation of these standards, and these are the regulatory requirement, environmental management safety manual aspect and objectives. So these are the criteria. You have to check that either the organization is fulfilling this criteria or not. The main item is the audit plan, which when you are going to be audited, before conducting the audit, you have to prepare your plan, and you have to send this plan to your client. And the audit plan, in audit plan, you have to describe your scope, objectives, and criteria, and the premises you will audit, and how many auditor you are going to use, and which documents you will use for the auditing of any activity. So in the plan, you have to do all these things, and you have to cover all these aspects. Dates and places and audit team members schedule, you have to fulfill all these requirements while you are going to plan an audit. And at the same time, you have to prepare your working documents which you will use during the audit, and these are the forms, checklist, and records of meetings. Maintain, you will maintain all these things, your audit notes, till the audit will be completed, and you will keep these records with the audit back. To give a direction to your audit that what you have to go do next, you have to develop a proper checklist. Checklist will help you that what you have to do, and it will help you to miss any activity which is required to be conducted, or which is required to be audited. So in the audit checklist, you have to describe the audit criteria, departments you will audit, and you will ask in the following way: who, what, when, where, why, how, and show me. You will ask each and every question in your checklist. So any activity will be evaluated in a proper manner. As a lead auditor, when before going to the audit, or conducting an audit, you have to review the ISO documentation, and if there is some missing area, or something is not fulfilling the requirements of the standard, you can raise a red flag, or you can raise a major non-conformity. And you have to verify the environmental management system of the company is fulfilling the requirements of ISO 14000, and all this activity is the based on the samples. We cannot check each and everything because we have limited time, so we have to select a sample, and sample should be true representative of the population, and on the basis of this sample we write our findings, or we come to some result. You have to ensure that system is properly implemented and fulfilling all the requirements of the ISO 14001 to the ISO 14001. So the ISO 14000 has the two steps. One step is the document review, and second is the on-site audit. So before going to the on-site, you have to review the documentation of the organization. You have to review their environmental policy. You have to review their manual, their procedures, and their internal audit records, and their environmental aspects and impacts. On the day of the audit will be started with the opening meeting, and it is very important event which give the first impression to the client. And as a lead editor, the lead editor will conduct this opening meeting. He will introduce himself and his team to the client or auditee, and he will discuss the schedule, and he will confirm the availability of the required facilities or logistic issues. And during the opening meeting, you will also explain the nature of the non-conformities, and you will also set the time and date for the closing meeting. And you will also invite the auditee for any question. If they want to know any information, they can ask you. And during the audit, you have to gather the audit evidence, and these are the information records, statements of fact, and these are the procedures and implementation of the procedures, and records which are created by the organization for during the implementation of these procedures. And you have to ensure that the proper training has been provided to the personnel who are implementing these procedures. So you can collect and evidence through interviews, and by examination of documentation or observations. So you can get the information by these three ways. And you have to ensure that you are asking the right questions and to the right persons. So it will be better that you identify the persons you want to audit, interview. So it will be good that if you do not limit your question to the managers only, you have to also ask to the workers and operators and the supervisors and non-managerial staff. And you should ask the open-ended questions, and you should listen the answers of the interviewees very carefully. And when you start interview, you should explain and the purpose of the interview, and you should introduce yourself, and then start getting information from the auditee or interviewee in a very positive manner, and do not speak negatively or do not speak in a sarcasm way. The interview should be structured, and you have to develop all the questions before conducting the interview. And auditor should be very attentive, patient, and should pay a close attention to response. So you have to maintain your interest and do not judge anything on the very early stage. You have to collect more and more evidences, and you have to support any fact by different ways. You have to review the EMS documents, and you have to confirm that the required documents are available on the related places, and the requirements aspects are properly identified, and the legal requirements are properly identified and fulfilled, and objectives and targets are established of the different areas, and environment management procedure exist in different areas. And if there is a change, it should be documented, and training records should be maintained, and proof of internal and external communication should be maintained, and the documents should be identified, and obsolete documents should be separated from any misuse, and you have to ensure that emergency preparedness is in place, and monitoring and measurement is available. You have to ensure that corrective action has been taken at the appropriate time, and these are the closed properly. Environmental records are identifiable, traceable, and legible, and management review has been occurred according to the planned intervals, and who is responsible for different activities, and you have to ensure and evaluate all these efforts. During the audit, and you are working and going to the different departments, you should watch each and everything very carefully, and you have to pay close attention to environmental different significant environmental, and you should avoid to reach to any conclusion. Suddenly you have to observe the thing, and you also check the related document, and you should conduct the interview, and on the basis of these sources of information, you should then reach to some certain decision. There are, because during the interview you have to get many information through the employees, so you have to be familiar with the different behaviors of the employees, and some employees may be apprehensive, some employees may be disgruntled, and some employees there is somewhere poor communication, there is somewhere there is bad timing and language barrier, and so you have to do an interview in a way that you can get the information in a very right and effective manner. There are something, if you see that there is something not complying with the requirements of the standard, then you have to raise the non-conformance. Non-conformance, and if any clause of the IS 14000 standard is not addressed, you can raise the non-conformance. Non-conformance can be major or minor. So if any clause of the ISO 14000 standard is not addressed, then it will be major non-conformance. And if the clause is addressed but in a weak manner, then you can raise the minor non-conformance. And if as an editor you feel that if this practice will be continued, then you can raise the observation. The observation is basically not a non-compliance of standard, but if you feel that if this practice will continue, then it may become the non-conformance. So there are three basic or important part of an audit activity. The first is the planning, and the second is the audit itself, and the third is the audit report. So you have to what you have done during the audit, you have to report it. So you have to describe the nature of non-conformance in a separate manner. So what is the missing, or what are the elements which are not addressed by the environmental management system. You have to raise non-conformance report. So it should be one-page report, and it should be reported to the management, and it should be mentioned that either this is the major non-conformance or minor non-conformance, and where this non-conformance was raised. You have to mention the locality, department, and which you have to also mention the which clause of IS 14000 has not been addressed properly. And this non-conformance report should be properly signed. The very difficult and very demanding area is the environment law. So there are many environment law, and as a EMS auditor or lead auditor, you should be very familiar with them. And these laws are not one-page document. These are very heavy document, and you have to go through all these laws, so you can evaluate and check how these laws and have been addressed by the auditee. And then you have to prepare the summary of the audit findings, and you have to mention the which areas are properly addressed and which areas need to be improved. So you have to prepare at the end of the audit. You have to prepare a comprehensive report, and this is the main responsibility of the lead auditor who will prepare this report. You have to mention which departments and which people have participated in this audit, and you have to mention the scope and objective of the audit, and you have to give the document reference numbers you have seen during the audit, and you have to give a short summary of each non-conformity, and you have to describe the summary of each area which you have audit. So this is all about the difficulties we face during the ISO 14001 audit. If these are basically these are the steps we follow during the audit, and but if we are weak in any area, this will create more problem for us, and this will definitely difficult situation if we are not following these steps properly. So this is all for today.
Mr. Shah, thank you for this presentation. We have a lot of questions, but we have a limited time, so we'll try to answer two of them. You have mentioned some of the most common problems during the auditing, but according to your experience, what are the most common problems in general that may come up during the auditing process? For example, take an example, something that happened to you.
Most difficult area is the environmental law, because every region and every state have different environmental law. So as a editor, when we are moving to the different regions, we have to be very familiar with these laws, and as I have mentioned during my presentation, that laws are not small papers. These are the very huge books sometime, and a number of pages sometime. So during evaluation of a system for EMS, an editor should be very much familiar with these laws, because the standard also says that we have to fulfill the laws. So the standard is the same, but the laws vary different in the different regions.
Okay, thank you. And the second question is, what is your general advice for organizations regarding the auditing process?
The, uh, the important thing is the training. They must train their force, so in a way that maximum managerial staff or even the non-managerial staff become the familiar with the requirement of the standard. If the more people are aware with the requirements of the standard, it will be very easy for them, and that they will implement the standard in a good manner. And if somebody is aware about the requirements, he will be basically doing his audit by himself, and then they will be prepared, very well prepared for any coming audit. So they should focus on our trainings.
Okay, Mr. Shah, thank you once again for this presentation. I would also like to thank all the attendees for taking the time out of their busy schedule to join us. We hope you enjoyed this webinar. We received all of your questions, but because the time is limited, we will answer to your questions individually by email. Also, don't forget to check PCB's webinar schedule on our website pcb.com or our social media network. See you next week, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.